I mean, you'll print it with that glue, before you're sending it off to mastering.
Mostly yes, but I try to keep it as light as possible, like 0 point values. I don't slam it like 2 to 60 and then send it to the mastering machine, and he will just get headaches.
Have nothing to do with.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I will let him know, the mastering engineer or the client, and I like to have at least a little bit of tape, at least a little bit of compression mixed into that, and have a limiter on and off to just get a feel for the loudness overall.
Right.
Maybe
how the limiter will react to it.
Exactly. Some metering tools, some basic stuff, and that's it. But for my channels, I like to have my trusted soft tube console right now. That's basically it. And then as I go and like color code my stuff and separate it into groups, and then like, okay, this is main vocal, it gets my main vocal channel strip, and then I adjust those values, which I can do super fast in Ableton. Super, super fast.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. So let's get back into the song section a little bit more.
Right.
So chronologically, what happens after you've imported this sample to Splice that you've made?
Right. So I import back into Ableton, and usually when I produce the actual sample, and if I have a vocal too already, I produce the sample like a half note below or above, so I can pitch it back into the original tempo. But then it actually sounds pitched, because that's just the specialty to sample stuff. It's always pitched up or down, and it's always time shifted a couple BPM. So I produce it usually faster or slower than it should be, and in a different key, like 1 or 2 half steps above or below. I pitch it back into the original key that it should be in, put it into the desired BPM, splice it up into an 8-bar 16 bar loop, and start adding drums. That's the first thing. Start adding kick, snare, clap, start building out the drum section to it. Once that's done, I try to add more elements. If it needs like a bass on top, I do the bass. If it needs something else. So I try to work on a simple arrangement first. And mostly if I produce the sample, that's either the verse or the chorus, or both. But then I also need like an intro, a pre-chorus. That's happening actually in the new session. And then I don't sample anything. I just produce it out, use Diva or Serum or whatnot, and actually write it into the new section. But I start out by actually sampling this thing, adding drums, and building up simple arrangement. If I have a scratch vocal, I always like to. It's always easy to write a scratch vocal. That's the easiest thing. If I get a scratch vocal demo, that's actually super easy to write to. Since I come from the EDM remixing background, all of those, that's actually easy.
Interesting.
I've done lots and lots of remixes in the past. And usually you would get a remix pack with the vocal, because that's the most important part in a song that you remix. So it's actually pretty easy to write to a vocal. So that's kind of the process.
And what influences your arrangement and structural decisions?
Depends on a scratch vocal, probably. But I try to keep it very simple and not too... I try to go for a perfect blend between like new disco-y and mainstream. It depends on the song, of course. If it's something more mainstream, I try to keep it as poppy and Ariana Grande as possible. Like verse, pre-chorus, chorus, and then maybe the occasional bridge into the double chorus at the end. Sometimes if it's something more that gets played on like DJ desks live, you need like more of an intro and an outro, because DJs need the time to actually sync the song to whatever's come before. So that might get like an extended edit with like a longer intro, longer outro, stuff like that. But if I struggle with arrangement, I straight up steal. That's what I do. I might get a reference. I'm like, hey, this kind of sounds like what I would like to produce. I pull it in, set the BPM at the appropriate setting, and just go through the song, put Ableton markers on top, and just label like intro, verse, pre-chorus, chorus, and just steal the arrangement. Just the arrangement. No sounds, no like sound design. Maybe some filtering tricks that I might... Like last time I did it, I was actually used the Calvin Harris Dua Lipa track, the One Kiss. It's very creative, very simple, but it's brilliant how simple and brilliant it is at the same time, like genius. And like the changes in between sections are crazy. So I just snag a couple of those into my production with the overall arrangement structure, which is how you should do it, actually, because that's how people do it. That's how it works. That's how we learn it. That's how those cookie cutter formulaic arrangements work. I'm not talking about the actual cookie cutter production, but arrangement wise, if you listen to the top 50 and just pick out like the most poppy songs and just put them into arrangement, they all will have like the same structure.
Yeah, and it's what listeners are used to also.
Yeah, it's kind of what they expect.
Right. So how do you balance your creative vision with what the artist is going for?
Communication, 100%, which doesn't work 100% of the time, of course, because, you know, you need to vibe it out, and you're only human, and sometimes you have shit coming in between. But communication is the most important thing, especially for us online-based people. Actually, nowadays, if you don't have a huge facility, you're almost 99% of the time online-based, because that's how the world works. But you need to sit down and talk a lot over Skype, FaceTime, text, whatever. But Skype always works best. If we need to sit down and talk for an hour, I'll do that. If we need to sit down and talk for 2 hours, 5 hours, that happens as well. I will do that.
Wow.
That happens. Sometimes you just start talking about the overall vision, and you go into each and every single aspect, because I always go way beyond just the initial production, because that's expected, you know, like, of course you will produce the song, but to actually deliver on that and to help people beyond that, I want to be involved as much as possible, given the circumstances. So it might be helping them find their own sound, or find their image they don't want to display, that's as much of an authentic image as possible, while being interesting to other people as well. So we might go into a 5-hour discussion about every little thing, and CD covers and Spotify playlisting and write-ups and all of that shit, and then we might get to work. So if we need to sit down and talk about each and everything, we will do that, because that's the only way to do it nowadays. I just don't, you know, I don't want to be associated with just a service provider, you know. That's like, service provider for me is like a guy, like a remote team viewer guy you use, you know, like someone who pulls a knob, or like pulls a fader on the other end of the world, and that's it. That's not what I want to do, and that's the wrong approach of doing it today. So if you see people like online mixing services, you're already putting yourself, by saying that, into competition with hundreds and thousands of other guys who do the same shit. But if you position yourself as a problem solver, I'm not a producer, I'm not a musician. Of course I am, in a sense, but first and foremost, I'm a problem solver for people. And if I can transfer their state from before, and then they experience my service and my expertise and all of my stuff, and the state changes to the desired state, from kind of mad to happy, and then I achieve my goal. And in business, and this is what I learned over the couple of years, it's the business that thrives long term is not the business that turns a lead into a paying customer. It's the business who turns a lead into a long-term happy customer. And that goes beyond just a delivered service. It goes kind of onto a friendship level, like a mutual relationship, actually, where people appreciate each other way beyond just the...
Right. It's not coming to a convenience store and buying a Coca-Cola.
Exactly.
Right?
And then buy, never see you again. That's more of a long-term thing. Of course, I'm not perfect at this. Of course, I had setbacks and, like, you know, fallouts and shit like that, because that's just the way humanity is, and businesses in general. But as much as I can, I try to do that. And 99% of the clients I do have right now, I have a personal relationship with. And even I work with a Russian group, like 2 guys over the last 1.5 years. We produced 7 singles, and each and every one was an experiment. And one of them just visited me in Berlin here. He slept at my crib for like 10 days. He became a friend, and we did lots of stuff beyond just producing. So of course you mix and produce one song, but that's how it turns out. And people flew me out to like Switzerland and like other countries, and then that's the level of relationships I want to have long term.
I love it. It's an inspiration, man. Most of us tend to fluctuate between high and low levels of creativity. Do you do anything specific when you need to get inspired?
I don't know if I do anything to get inspired, but if I'm not inspired, I don't do anything. So if I sit down, and usually you need to get you need an hour, 2, 3 to get into the creative zone. So it doesn't happen in like 15,
you have a
20
flow
minutes.
State.
Exactly. You need to get into the shit. You need to sometimes need to force yourself a little bit. But if I feel that after like 2 hours, there's nothing happening today that's super magical, I will not like jerk the monkey. I would just leave. I would just go and skate or like buy myself something food wise, like go meet someone, although I'm kind of recluse, but still. But I don't force myself to do anything because putting pressure, secondary pressure on yourself, like, first thing is sitting down doesn't work. Then like, oh, I'm such a bad producer. Nothing magical work. And we go into this whole thing thinking like we're going to sit down and produce like a hit in 2 hours. Like that's the expectation level. That's the bar. Sitting down and producing the best song someone ever produced ever, like someone ever mixed. And you get into this thing already with like a wrong goal. Kind of the goal is to enjoy yourself and to get lost in the process, but you always go with this end goal in mind, with producing something that's so perfect, so unattainable that we kind of incapacitate ourselves from the beginning, because you always go into this whole thing with expectations you cannot reach, and that paralyzes me sometimes, even up until now, and I just can't get anything done. But the thing is, the secret is not beating yourself up over this, because that's music. We're not cashiers. We're not like bank people who sit down and crunch numbers easily every day, because that's a straightforward task. We're art people. We're musicians. That's something that one shouldn't provoke. And you see it as craft, of course, but craft implies that you can do it, just like that, routinely, which it's not. Of course, you should have your routines and your rituals, but music is nothing that you can magically force out of yourself by just, sitting down like, you need to get this done. That's not how music works. You can seduce the muse a little bit, but you cannot, bend her over and fuck her up the ass when you want. Excuse me for being that blunt, but this is not how it works in that regard. You just cannot force the muse to work for yourself whenever you want. And if it doesn't, I give myself the space and the freedom to go fuck off and do anything. I do admin work, reply to emails, watch tutorials. There's always something to do if it's not actually produced. There's always
it's
something
hard to
do
it's hard to be bored these days, Like,
I rarely get bored.
all of our niche interests are all readily available, even too much available.
Right.
All the time.
Right. Of course,
Totally.
you need to get real about your energy levels and kind of distribute those effectively throughout the day. But it's a whole different question, of course.
I'm sure the fact that you work out, is a big part of it also.
I don't know. Probably if I wouldn't have the gym and working out 3 to 4 times a week intensely, I would probably be an alcoholic or something like that, because you need at least something that de-stresses you, decompresses you, and gives you some kind of a dopamine release at the end of the day. Because your receptors, especially if you work in music, your serotonin and dopamine receptors, they get emptied out like that. You need to refill them.
Really?
They get emptied out like that. Like if you don't refill them with something positive, because there's positive habits and negative habits. Negative is drinking, taking drugs, jerking off, which is harmful to you actually long term, because that even more depletes your serotonin and dopamine levels.
Interesting.
And there's positive stuff, which is working out, meditating, which I should do more of, relaxing, like proactive relaxing, maybe sleeping, maybe breath work, maybe meeting up with friends and having a good time. But that actually replenishes you, and the other things, they would just kill you long term. So because I know lots and lots of people who became alcoholics or drug addicts in our niche just because they can't handle the stress in a proactive, positive way. And they just turn to that, because that's how we are as human beings. We have this animal side into us that needs some kind of relief at the end of the day, because